OJ Lopez here, and today we're going to be going over a little project that we've got going on. What we have here is the VF Engineering Supercharger kit for a 09 to 14 Lamborghini Gallardo. Now what this kit is supposed to do is add 200 horsepower to the car, making it around a 750 horsepower vehicle. The kit uses a root-style supercharger, which is a Magnuson 2300. Basically, it's a root-style blower that boosts the car to about 6.5 psi throughout the rev range. So we're going to be unboxing this here and seeing what we're about to put on this car and just kind of go over what's included with the kit. Now this kit is a root-style supercharger, I said. It's a air-to-water intercooled, so what we've got here, I'm assuming, is the lines that we're going to need to run back and forth between the air-to-water intercooler. Seems about a few feet of line here that should be able to run it all the way up to the front of the vehicle and then back to the supercharger intercooler itself. Now it's advertised as a cast intercooler, so I believe that's what we have here. A little heavy. I'll flip it over this way. What we have here is the cast intercooler's core into a manifold, and on this back side, we've got the blower housing and the pulleys here up front. The rest of this box feels a little light, so that might be it. Let's double check though. I'm going to move this onto the ground. I think that's it for the first box. So let's find out what we got going on the second box now. Now this kit is supposed to be full bolt-on, meaning that we shouldn't need to cut into the car, modify the car in any way, and it should be fully reversible if the owner wants to go back to stock. This appears to be a heat exchanger. I'm going to assume we're going to have two of those, one for each side of the vehicle. And that's what that looks like, another heat exchanger. This appears to be the heat exchanger coolant tank. As you can see, we've got a pump. This appears to be a Bosch electronic water pump with an inlet and outlet, as well as a overflow or feeder line here. Maybe bleeder, we'll find out once we get the kit instructions. Got a smaller box here. We'll cut that open in a second. This is a plate of some sort. I'm going to assume it's a cover for intercooler. But we'll find out about that once I cut it open. But there we go. Looks like we got the instruction manual here. That appears to be a Canon air filter. This has some weight to it. Yeah, I'm just going to pull the boxes out and we'll start chopping them open. This appears to be a pretty fancy box. This appears to be a template. Water tank template. So that'll probably be used for mounting. We don't want to disturb or destroy that, so let's put that somewhere careful. Hush mat. Probably some sound bending material. Got two more boxes in here before we start getting into the smaller boxes. That is it for the main two boxes. Feels kind of heavy. Pulley tensioner, the bracket for the supercharger for the new belt. I'm going to assume this is going to be the pulley itself, being that it's boxed in the same thing. I don't want to scratch the pulley, and that's what that is. Those back, make sure they're safe. Next box. We got some hoses here. It says it's fuel line. Appears to be a relay, maybe for the pump for the intercooler system. And more than a few different types of brackets here. This seems to be a bent metal bracket with some hex bolts. Lots of hose clamps and hose clamp accessories, hose holders. And that is it for this other small box. Poly belt, smaller rib. 5, or this one's a 4 rib. And this one's a 7. As well as what appears to be some sort of coolant transfer pipe. Maybe for the blower. Oh, it's a pretty piece here. This appears to be the inlet for the supercharger housing. It appears to be cast aluminum with the blower inlet design on this end. And this appears to be the mounts for the throttle inlets, the throttle bodies that go on here. One on each side, which will be for each bank. Hose for a hose mount. We'll find out which hose that is. And inside of here, a nicely built plastic hose. Kind of looks like a PVC system breather or something along those lines. I don't want this to get scratched up. It's a really nice looking piece with a really nicely done embossed logo on the front with a crinkle black finish. Looks really pro. It'll be a nice centerpiece inside that manifold. As you know, the Gallardos are pretty showy engine bays, so you got to have something in there that's going to look the part, you know. This one's a little heavier than the others. Ooh, there we go. Got a harmonic crank pulley balancer. Appears to be a multi-piece made by Fluid Dampener, which is a very high-end name in the world of harmonic balancers. So this piece looks pretty pro. It says meets SFI spec 18.1. There's our SFI spec sheet and installation instructions. Probably have some sort of important torque sequence, so we'll want to make sure we follow that. All right, we got some miscellaneous parts in this one. So this appears to be some sort of breather hose, a rubber hose with a braided out protective fitting. Looks pretty nice. We got some ear clamps in there. 10 NGK spark plugs, heat range 8, so good for boost. My guess is this is some sort of installation tool. We'll find out how that's used in the instruction manual. Some corrugate tubing to kind of cover something, protect it from heat. Either fuel line, possibly a mount to move the AC filler. Not 100% sure. It's got a fitting that looks like an AC adapter. Also could be a cover for a fuel fitting, but again, we'll have to check the installation manual, figure out where that goes. Zip ties, always necessary. Just got to make sure you use them in a classy manner, but it's never a bad thing to have some zip ties around. And this appears to be a bracket, which I'm going to assume for running more pulleys for winding up that supercharger belt. Let's pop this open and see what it looks like. Really nice, good looking machine part with some almost a bronze color, a bronzy gray pulleys here. Just looking really kind of a satin metallic matte finish. But the pulleys, the bearings on them, the mounts, the bolts, the reliefs cut into the bracket itself just all look really, really pro. So this will look as good as it performs, hopefully. 2 more packages here. That's the sound deadening. I talked about that earlier. We've got 2 K&N air filters. The nice thing about these, we have the outerwear cover, which is going to protect them from the elements, rain, some dust, things along those lines. We also have the air mass meter mounts on here that will allow the air mass meter sensor to mount right into these housings, which fit the air filters. Looks like it's one piece, so if you have to replace it, you get a whole new housings. Oh, and that's a nice touch on there. You got the K&N red, but also you have carbon fiber top. You got to have carbon fiber. Can never have too little carbon fiber on a supercar. So really, really nice touch. You know it's professionally made because it's K&N. So of course we got 2 of those in there. So I'm assuming is the plate that mounts onto the Supercharger bottom cover. Taped to here, we've got gaskets. So this is going to mount to the cylinder head. And it appears there's a rope-like gasket that's going to fit, you see this here, that's going to fit into this relief, possibly, to seal it up. And that will seal to the surface of the Supercharger, which I'll go ahead and unwrap so we can see it a little bit in its full glory. Just going to be extra careful here not to mar this up because it looks really nice. Now it's not light, as you'd expect something cast with rotating lobes inside of there. It's a root style blower. So here we have the intercooler, the plumbing for it. And that, like I said, that's air to water. So this is the water section. The intercooler here is fed by these 2 inlets and outlets where your coolant is going to come in and be removed from in order to keep this engine intake temperatures a lot lower. And that plate I was just showing you is going to mount to this area. And that's going to go on the cylinder head in the valley of the V of the engine. This is the top. This is the pulley that does all the fun that we're going to be having. That guy moves, helps turn the rotors inside of here, and that creates our boost. This guy's the bypass valve, and it looks like in this application the bypass valve is going to reduce parasitic losses for the engine. Probably help keep the boost in its 6 psi level from an advertised 2,000 to 8,500 RPM. So using that guy, they can kind of make things more linear, make the response linear as well. Again, these pulleys look like they match the other pulleys, these 2 down here, but this one looks a little bit more machined. Maybe a little bit heavier duty materials because it is the guy spitting, doing all the work. So a little different, but that being said, this thing finished in a wrinkle black looks pretty menacing, and I'm sure with that manifold that's going to be on here, it's going to look even more menacing. Lastly, we will go and pop these guys open. Actually, I'll probably just pop one. This, what I assume, is the heat exchanger that mounts to the front of the vehicle. The pump is going to be pumping the coolant all the way up to the front of the vehicle, where I'm sure these are mounted, via those long hoses that I first opened up. And I'm only assuming it's the front of the vehicle. It could be the sides, but those are awfully long hoses. We're going to look at the manual here in a few minutes to know exactly where it's at. But here is the heat exchanger, very light. And there's 2 of these, so they'll get the job done of keeping this engine cool. We have the fittings here to let the coolant in and let the coolant out. And it looks like, oh, one more. Well, this is most likely the cable that I talked about earlier, because I've seen this green box several times in our career. Hex tuning cable. That's going to allow us to access the ECU file to be able to modify it, because this is a full bolt-on system. It's going to use the stock ECU in its programming of the vehicle's parameters to run the Supercharger to make things nice and controlled and safe, so that it makes power that is reliable, that doesn't put the engine in any stress, and can be ran for many, many miles. That's kind of what you want. So, that basically covers what we've got. Coming up soon, we're going to be having the installation feature on the VF Supercharger going on this customer's vehicle. So we'll have lots more information about before and after. Things that we find that are a little bit different or that we're adding our touches to. when installing the Supercharger. And then, of course, the results on dyno, before, after, and then, sound clips and all that good stuff. So stay tuned. Remember to like and subscribe, and come back, check out some more information on this and other vehicles that Fluid Motor Union's doing. Thanks a bunch.